Hello, everyone. We are live, and yeah. So if I smell bad, I'm sorry. Fortunately, the internet is not a
smell-o-vision
yet. I'm sure there's an app for that. But if I smell bad, it's because I've spent the last. So if anyone who has children, and Anthony can relate to this, if you have children, you end in a situation where eventually one of your cars will stink uncontrollably, and you can't find why. Like you go through it and it's just it's like milk has been spilled into the seats or something has happened, and it's like identify the smell. It's like, we used to have the thing in our house, we used to play what stinks, in the refrigerator. Well, what stinks in the car? So my wife's been driving around for 4 days with the windows down, just like gasping for air every time she gets into her car. So I finally said to her, I'm like, I got a little time this morning, which is rare. Take the car out, clean your car out. For the last hour and a half, gasping for air outside, in this, and try and clean the car, and I finally find what has happened. One of my kids or one of their friends, we kick a lot of people around in that car, so who knows? So the kids took a milk box, like an old-fashioned milk crate box, little thing, and managed to shove it into the pockets of one of the back seats behind the front seat, when it was half empty, leaving it open, even it's broken open, half empty in the back part compartment.
So you got curdled milk in the bottom.
And I think it's been in there for like probably a month. I almost vomited like all over myself, like upon like opening the back. It was obvious where it was coming from when I got in there.
This sounds like the scene from Grumpy Old Men where Jack Lemmon threw the fish in the back of the car of Walter Matthau's car.
Oh yeah. This is really rough. This is really rough. So
it's even worse. I've been through this, Mike. It's just all my wife's trunk. It's just awful. It's the worst thing ever.
Getting a smell out of a car. I mean, there's a whole Mythbusters on getting a smell out of a car. If you ever want to watch it,
Seinfeld couldn't do it.
The great Mythbusters where they put 2 dead pigs into a car, seal the car up in a garage for 2 months. They close the car. They duct tape all the windows and everything, so there's no air at all. They open it up and then they try. The whole myth is, can you sell a car that has gone through this? Like, can you get the stink out of a car enough to sell it?
Well, the one you used Febreze with.
Yeah, I mean it's way worse than Febreze. It was like when they opened it up, a couple people passed out from the ammonia. They're just like. It was like they passed out. It was really dangerous. They had that medics on hand. They finally, all the pigs had turned into liquid on the floor.
Right.
Seeped into the cars. They took all of the seats out, and then they just took all the carpeting out. Everything like that. Tried to sell it. They finally did sell it for like $1,500 without seats or carpeting or anything inside.
They sold the car.
Well, let me touch on something even more vomit-inducing, which is Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It's Friday, guys.
Just kidding.
Hope you're having lunch right now as you sit back and watch the podcast. Yeah.
No, yeah. There goes that sponsorship. I don't know if anybody has noticed, and I'm sure most people have, is that Kentucky Fried Chicken with this Colonel Sanders commercial thing that they've been doing the last year or so with the multiple Colonel Sanderses. It started out, I think, with Norm Macdonald, then it went to Rob Lowe and George Hamilton.
Well, you know why it happened, don't you? It happened because when they did the first batch with just the one new guy, it was so awful that the only way they could figure out how to recover is just have it be a million different Colonel Sanders. Because at first it was just one new guy for like 3 or 4, and people were like, he's horrible. He looks like a pedophile.
It was Darrell Hammond. It was Darrell Hammond from Saturday.
And people complained. And then so what their answer to that was, we'll just get a bunch of guys to do it.
Great. So it was the way you correct one screw up is to make 10 screw ups.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, it's like, it's really, there are advertising campaigns that I appreciate and that I like. There are ones that I can't stand, like Geico, where we see, or Geico especially during the Stanley Cup playoffs, where they see them ad nauseum, the same commercial over and over. Every single one of the Kentucky Fried Chicken commercials has been abysmal. It's been terrible. Just, you got to change this. It's not that you're
so bad. It's so bad. It's good.
Well, I see that. I hate that. I hate that premise in advertising. Their aim is to make a commercial so bad attention that it attracts attention to the product. To me, it makes me not want to buy Kentucky Fried Chicken. But there are people out there that apparently, we see Rob Lowe look like, like you said, like a pedophile, and it's like, oh, I want a basket of chicken.
Well, do you want to know the craziest thing about Kentucky Fried Chicken? I'm sure you do. Here, I'm going to tell you. Okay, so this is the thing. Kentucky Fried Chicken has become an absolute staple of Japanese Christmas. I don't know if you know this or not. This is honest to God truth. That it was about 20 years ago. Kentucky Fried Chicken did this like "Go Kentucky" for Christmas in Japan. Okay, and that was 20 years ago. Over the last 20 years, this tradition has grown so big that you have to order your Kentucky Fried Chicken 2 weeks ahead before Christmas to pick it up on Christmas Day and have buckets of chicken, which is what the Japanese people in huge numbers eat on Christmas Day.
It's not Kentucky Fried Turkey.
No, this is exactly 100% the truth.
Is this what they do when they're in Atlantic City? Because I know that a lot of them go to Atlantic City.
This is a Japanese tradition. This is one of the biggest Christmas traditions.
I recently got back, as you guys know. I was with my wife in St. Petersburg, Russia. We did a 1 week trip there.
We didn't know. Do you have any pictures? I said I didn't know. Do you have any pictures?
Tons of them, just for you, Russ.
I'm envious.
So, for those who don't know, obviously you two do. There is Kentucky Fried Chicken everywhere.
Yeah.
In Russia, both in St. Petersburg and in Moscow. The Russians love Kentucky Fried Chicken.
It was true in Germany and Austria, where I was earlier last month.
Jamaica has it too. I was in Jamaica; they had it.
I think it's just. I think this is like beyond McDonald's, which is also everywhere, but not. I think there might be as many Kentucky Fried Chickens as there are McDonald's. In the world, it's just crazy when you go out there. I agree completely, but but whenever I talk about Kentucky Fried Chicken, I really have the craving to pick up like a bucket of chicken. So thanks, guys. You really have done.
Go to Popeyes. It's better.
Shower first.
Popeyes.
Nothing better than a bucket. Anyway, all right, let's start.
Anthony, follow me.
All right.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, July 28th, 2017.
I'm Michael Lagello.
I'm Anthony Majone, senior writer from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund. You're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And I have some interesting rumors today to talk to. We will get to them shortly. It's funny how Fridays, it used to be the Friday news cycle we talked about a lot, was this thing where, you wanted to do something crazy. If you did something crazy, you wanted to do it on Friday after 5 o'clock because it would be after the local news hit. It would go over the weekend. And by Monday, people would sort of be like, if you figured it out or quote unquote rationalized with it or whatever you want to say about it, and they'd be okay with it. And I thought that kind of went away for a few years because of the internet and everything like that. And but I've noticed it returning over the last year or so. We've seen a lot of Friday things happen. And I talked to somebody about it, and they said it's because less people are going to talk on Twitter on the weekends, which is true. The Twitter's way less busy on Saturdays and Sundays than it is Monday through Friday because it's what people do to get out of working. Usually, the weekends when they're home, they're not necessarily on Twitter, or the internet in general. So there is a Friday thing again, and so we'll get into those rumors. We answered some questions yesterday from YouTube, and we got some responses. I want to read a couple of them real quick. And so I was yesterday I was wearing Sakic's jersey with the 88 on it, which I remembered. He actually did wear 88 when he was a rookie, and I remembered the story of him wearing it as a vindictive thing because Lindros was going to be drafted probably to the Nordiques, and he knew that Lindros didn't want to come to the Nordiques, so he wore 88 sort of as like a thing. Well, I was corrected. I said someone's going to correct me, and Cuban being, heck, you're right. Someone will correct you. Sakic did wear 88 in his rookie year because 19 was taken by Alain Cote. Lindros wasn't drafted until 1991. But Sakic's rookie year was 87, 88. And so clearly one has nothing to do with the other. Owen Nolan also wore 88 in his rookie year for Quebec, but he was drafted a year before Lindros. I believe Owen Nolan was the one who wore it vindictively.
Oh,
funny, but I know they both wore it, but I think
Owen Nolan's on Twitter, so now he may correct you, but that's all right.
He also coaches he's also the coach of one of my wife's best friends' youth hockey teams. Owen Nolan. So yes, I'm sure we'll hear from him at some point. Him and Evgeny Nabokov are coaching a killer team from out in San Jose. So anyway, that was pretty good. And I when he said this, I'm like, darn it, I do remember this. I've made this mistake before. And it's so funny when you get old enough to make the same mistake twice and forget about it. But that these two players did wear 88. One wore it just, second wore it kind of just for the heck of, for whatever reason, it was 88. And probably because of Lindros or Sack or Lemieux or something like that. My guess would be.
Yeah, I wasn't buying that Joe Sakic was vindictive. If you saw, I was surprised.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and Owen Nolan, but Owen Nolan, I'm almost positive did wear it out of.
Owen Nolan was meaner. He was meaner on the ice.
Yeah, I could see that more. I could definitely see Nolan doing something like that.
A couple other comments on there. Evan T. Young says, thanks for reading my comments. I don't dislike your opinion, though I don't always agree, but I don't think that's insane to believe that Seth Jones isn't part of the equation for Poyle when it comes to deciding Johansson's contract. We got into that. Well, you know, we talked about it yesterday. I don't think that it's connected necessarily, but we appreciate Evan very much. And another guy said, Basement SOTC said, glad you guys don't take the comments harshly, even if the comments are critical. Most of us still come back and watch the show. Well, that's absolutely 100% true.
Yep.
If we didn't have if we had a thin skin, believe me, we would not be here. At this point in time, I've heard about everything I could hear. So my favorite thing to do on Twitter is usually just ignore trolls. But every once in a while I'll say, oh, that's so 2005 of you, just because I've heard so many comments for so many years now that it's just like, okay, enough is enough. Anyway, let's get on to some rumors for a second because
can we just
talk Markov? Yeah, there's a couple of Markov things I have too. So go ahead.
Yeah, let's put a capper on this because at the end near the end of the show, it was announced he was going to the KHL. It came out this morning that he's signing a 2-year contract with Akbars Kazan. Now, the interesting.
I just pulled a tick out of my hair. I apologize. Reach into my hair. It's something else I got from the car, washing the car. I apologize. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you for that. So he signs a 2-year contract, but the interesting thing is whether there is an opt-out in this contract. Now, I would imagine, and Anthony, you first here, I would imagine that there would be an opt-out at least for the second year. But what I'm wondering is he's going to the KHL purportedly to play in the Olympics. After the Olympics, we know the KHL playoffs, I think they start in March. But if the deadline is like March the trade deadline in the NHL is March the 1st, he can sign in the NHL before the deadline if he has an opt-out. I think that the Markov story for this year isn't over with unless the contract doesn't allow it. That's
the question. We got to get into what the details of the contract actually are, which is going to be probably different. Maybe Collins will have some insight into that. But I would say that, in my mind, his comments, he really doesn't seem to want to play for any team other than the Montreal Canadiens. I know we know he flew the Flyers out. We knew he floated the Flyers out there, but we pretty much that got debunked pretty quickly as just a way of probably as part of negotiating ploy. My feel is he's going to be there for the season, and then with Montreal this season. They just have that feeling, Bergevin especially, seems to have this push all of his chips to the front of the table as much as he can because I'm getting this distinct impression in Montreal that this is potentially run this year. There could be a new general manager in Montreal this time next year. And in that circumstance, we could very easily, if the opt-out is for year 2, there's a chance that Markov could come back to Montreal with whoever the new general manager is on a reasonable 1-year deal to wrap things up with the Canadiens for his career. That's my read on it, at least right now. I could be wrong, but I think that's my read on it.
I think that's possible. And I've heard rumors about who the next Montreal Canadiens GM would be, too, by the way. I was talking to somebody last night about this. And this is a person who really is kind of familiar with it, too. And they believe that Pat Brisson will be the next general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, which is pretty fascinating, because he's obviously is an agent right now still. I heard years ago that he was offered the job when Bergevin took it. And that he said no and actually recommended Bergevin. So I think that's kind of interesting, that maybe he could actually be ready to take it now.
We'll see. I mean, look, it's happened before.
Yeah.
Had mixed reviews. He's a smart guy. The Markov thing, just like I said yesterday, I feel like there's an opt-out right after, the Olympics. I think they just lured him for the Olympics, and I think at that point I wouldn't be shocked if he's in the NHL after that. If Montreal wants him, if not, then he'll probably have an opt-out for the next season too. The other thing is though, he's 0 for 1 as an NHL agent. I think that's important to point out. Anybody else is hiring him.
And to Anthony, to your point regarding Bergevin going all in and pushing all of his chips into the middle of the table, he's doing that with a pair of sixes. Because right now, I don't know many people who would look at what Montreal has done in the offseason and say that they're a better team than they were last year. They're without Radulov. Now they're without Markov. I think their defense at best is even. I don't think it is. I think their defense got worse.
Their problem now is the fact that I have serious concerns with their ability. We could talk about the offensive ability of Jonathan Drouin until we're blue in the face.
Right.
They got to get the puck up to him.
You put a heck of a lot on Drouin, really. You really are. It's like
right, and if they keep, I mean, we've already had Claude Julien say, I don't have any confidence in Galchenyuk as a center by playing him for 2 games and then moving him back to the wing and then playing him in the 4th line in the playoffs. Maybe they give him a second chance, but you're either going to have Drouin, who's not a center, or Galchenyuk, who's not a center, playing center, and then you have Philip Deneau and Peter Holland and who's the other the overpaid Thomas Plekanec at $6 million. There's not a lot there, and you've got talent on the wings, but you need to have a center who can get them the puck. And right now, I don't see anybody who can.
I think it gets overblown in Montreal about them not having enough offense. They don't. But it's not that horrible. I mean, Pacioretty's still there. They have players. I mean, at the end of the day, I think their defense is still better. It's not the best puck-moving defense in the league anymore, but it's a better defense. I still think they're banking on winning games 2-1, and if Carey Price can do that, they're going to still go pretty far. Even regardless of what they look like on paper, they still have Carey Price. They still have a good top 4. I think they'll be okay.
Got a couple good, fun little Markov comments and statistics to throw out there too. I don't know if you guys saw the quotes. Some of his quotes in the press conference were hilarious. First, number 5 on my list here. I guess it's number 5, or maybe number 4. What I will miss the most is I think the gym will be empty without me in Montreal. Wondering, what does that mean exactly? I guess he's implying that his teammates don't work out very much, or that he thinks his teammates are kind of lazy. That's the impression I would get when a player says that he's the only guy.
I'm not sure that's what he means, but that is what we take out of it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and then to the media, you guys made me feel uncomfortable for so many years. I will miss you so much. There's nothing for me like a passive-aggressive Russian.
Boy, he's the Russian. He's the Russian Brian Burke on that one.
But here's the thing about it. I go back to the All-Star game when we were right in front of him. His first All-Star game, he's getting interviewed, and he was sweating buckets. He's just not comfortable doing interviews.
He's never been comfortable with the media.
And so it's not really the media's fault. It's him not being comfortable with them.
Yeah, well, and that's what he said. He said I'm uncomfortable. So maybe he's not. I don't know. Interesting. Larry Robinson on Markov. If I'm Markov, I'm going to feel good about the fact they had to get 2 people to replace me. Thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Good quote. And then finally, a statistic on Markov that someone pointed out to me. Markov has a point on 43% of all the power play goals scored by the Habs over the past 4 years. That's a crazy stat.
Yeah, the Montreal chapter of the AARP will be happy that Mark Streit is replacing Andrei Markov.
For 4 years. I mean, that's 4 years. He's almost been had a point on almost half their power play goals. That's pretty.
I mean, Streit will get a certain amount of points on the power play for sure. I mean, so I don't think it's going to be a loss, but I don't think it's massive.
You have to be careful with his usage, though. They're going to have to really.
Oh yeah, but on the power play, he can still do it.
Years in Philly, he's.
Yeah, I mean, it does help when you have Carey Price behind you. I mean, you have Carey Price behind you. That doesn't help. That doesn't hurt you.
No,
that's a lot better.
Last season was Streit mostly a bottom pairing guy with the Flyers,
except on the power play. Yeah,
right. He was hurt a lot too. It's so hard to say. Like he was hurt a lot. He wasn't in there. When he played, he was not. He was usually a top 4. I thought usually still a top 4 guy.
He was, but that was also by the very nature of the fact that Philadelphia's blue line was just.
It was abysmal.
last several years.
Right, and Gossespierre was scratched a lot of times. There were different situations.
Yeah, and in those situations, he was a top four. When Gossespierre was in there, I think he was on the bottom pair a little bit, but it doesn't matter. They wanted him for the power play. He still can do that. He can still shoot the puck. When he's 5-on-5, he's risky, man. We know that. He's
I thought it was interesting. For a while, he played with Provorov, and I thought that was the strangest thing in the world because you have normally you would have a veteran guy who's like the stay-at-home, more like the guy who helps the rookie when the rookie's taking the oddball chances in situations like that, where it was like Provorov was the guy who was protecting Streit.
Yeah.
And it had to be because again, Streit would go. The problem is when you're watching, the gap control was a real problem. Mark, when he would go in on one of his forays, he couldn't get back fast enough, and that led to 201s going back the other way so quick. And I mean, that was a trial by fire for Provorov. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, for sure. All right, next up, this is I've been sort of teasing this out for a couple of days because I've been talking to some of Tavares' friends up in Ontario, and and I kind of compare this to the Stamkos situation because last year, and I'm not the first person to do that, but I wanted to throw a little bit of a different spin on this and see what you guys think. Stamkos, remember like a year ago that Stamkos was liking tweets about him being in Toronto, and all the controversy was flying around Twitter about maybe Stamkos really wants to be a Maple Leaf and all this stuff. And but yeah, when you were around Stamkos or you talked to Stamkos, he was quite often he would never say he didn't want to play in Toronto, but he would always say how much he liked playing in a place where he could not be recognized and he could go out and stuff like that. And he liked playing in a semi-anonymous situation in Tampa. And he would talk about it when he went to Ontario, how he couldn't go anywhere without being greeted. And he was sort of like a shyer guy, so it was not a great situation. And there are some things that made me think that eventually he was going to end up back in Tampa, and we talked about it a lot last year. But Tavares is different when it comes to that part of things. Tavares has a really close friend group still very much in that area who are very vocal, and I've talked to them for a long time now, a couple of years. I've met them. I've met them. I've been in the same room with Tavares and these guys, so I know that these guys are legitimately his friends. I know, what we're talking about here that people have talked to, and they for years have talked about how, now they're of course Leaf fans and they want him to be a Leaf, so they're pushing him to be a Leaf, and they're always pushing him to be a Leaf, and and now lately I've heard a lot of over the past couple months, and then finally I got one of them to say something on the record, which was it's my Scaramucci moment. So it's nothing great, but the comment, which I thought was kind of interesting, was this: the closest I can say is JT truly loves the city of Toronto and looks at the talent he could be playing with up here and doesn't exactly scoff the possibility he could bring multiple cups to Yonge Street, where he teamed up with the young superstars already playing here. It's hard to not think about it, he has told me. So that's what the quote was. So I think there's something to the fact. Now I say all of this with the caveat that I know Tavares wants to stay an Islander. Right. Really, first and foremost, and I do believe that 100%. He's totally said that, and he's legit. He's not the kind of guy who would just say that. But it's getting to the point where the Islanders have less and less of opportunity to give him what he's going to need to be sure of that. So, I really think Toronto's a real possibility.
Well, okay, and caveat here regarding the Islanders. I mean, I think we've already passed the line of demarcation when it comes to the Islanders. If they were going to keep Tavares, they would have gone out and spent the money that they saved by trading Grabowski and getting themselves another winger and making it plain that we are devoting ourselves to contending right now. Whereas I think they're keeping the Beauvilliers, the Hosangs, the Barzols, they're keeping those young guys because I think they may be subconsciously preparing for the departure of Tavares, and they have to potentially fill that spot, which I think is unfillable because he's a superstar player. On the Toronto side of it, and I was going to write about this weekend, the upheaval that would have to be created in on the Maple Leafs to fit John Tavares, I think would be counterproductive to the franchise because, first of all, you're paying right now Nazem Kadri, who is not John Tavares, but is an effective center. He's making $4.5 million. conservatively, John Tavares as a unrestricted free agent is probably going to make between what Kane and Taves make and Carey Price and what Connor McDavid makes. So between 11 to 12 million.
Yes,
on the open market. Now, maybe Tavares would be willing to do what supposedly the Leafs were trying to do with Stamkos, which is take a lower base salary, and he'd be the spokesperson for Canadian Tire. Who knows? That might be the Leafs' plan to save cap room, but they would probably have to trade Kadri at his 4.5 because you'd have Matthews and you'd have Tavares. There's not enough room on that team for a Kadri as a third-line center making 4.5. Plus, you could get assets back, cheaper assets. And you're probably going to have to trade either William Nylander or Mitch Marner because you can't afford to pay them when they come up as a restricted free agent. So I don't know whether Tavares – I think Tavares is a phenomenal player. I just don't know whether the Leafs are willing to create an upheaval like that to fit John Tavares on their roster.
You know, it's funny. I've interviewed him a lot over the years, and he while he's very loyal to the Islanders, the last couple of years, I don't get the same feeling that he's as loyal or as vocal talking about how loyal he is to them. I think some of that is waning for sure. Yeah. I know he loves living on the island, and that's why I still think the Rangers will make a big play on him because he could get an apartment in Westchester just to travel to the practice rink and live on the island most of the time when they're playing in the city. Look, most of that team doesn't like the setup in Brooklyn. We know that. So in order for him to want to stay there, he's going to have to figure out where he's playing next with that team. They don't know. And if they don't give him an answer in the next 6 months, he's going to ride it out and go to free agency. And I still think he'll go back to the Islanders and tell them what his final offer is from somebody else.
Right.
But let's say a year from now they say, we're going back to Barclays because we don't have anything concrete. That's not impossible because New York politics goes very slow. And to get an arena deal in New York is very complicated. And that's what's holding up everything now. And it still hasn't materialized. And I think that's the biggest thing holding up. Even though the player thing we all deem is important, I still think it's the arena part that's really going to kill this if it doesn't happen soon. So I think, look, if they don't talk by September, I believe what will happen is he'll go into camp and he will say, we're not going to talk about it during the year. Maybe I'll talk about it during the All-Star break, and then that's it. Because he's not going to want a distraction.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think, well, there's two different things. To Mike's point, you have to decide. I don't think it's Kadri or Tavares. I think it's Marner or Tavares. I think you're more close to that. I think Kadri they can still manage. 4.5 is not that horrible. He's, especially when you're thinking a couple years from now or whatever. You know, that contract is we all accepted the fact that was a great contract when they signed it. Marner though is going to be a mega money contract. But
not to the point of Tavares.
Yeah, no.
But obviously Matthews is going to be 11 or 12 million as well. So you're going to have like a situation where you're going to have, or it could be 13 by the time Matthews is there. Who knows? But I think that every team seems to have that double. Contending teams have that double threat up top.
Mm-hmm.
And what that double threat is what you have to ask yourself. Do you want that double threat to be Tavares and Matthews or Marner and Matthews? And I think that's what it kind of comes down to. Now, I'm not saying you can't necessarily keep Marner, and I'm also not saying that Marner is going to be, a $10 million player either. Like I think that Marner is great, but he could be, but he might be like a $6 million player.
It's Marner or Nylander if you're. I mean, because I think
that's fair. I think that's totally, and that's legit, and you have to accept the fact you're going to lose somebody, but you're gaining John Tavares, so you're gaining John Tavares, you're going to lose somebody. Even if you're signing him as a free agent, you're going to lose somebody because you have to just, and you can get tons of stuff for Nylander or Marner. You can get a lot, so you can pick up draft picks that you don't have to pay for a while. That'll be huge, or pick up a defenseman or anything. There's every number of things you can do there. But if Tavares wants to come to the Leafs, I have to think the Leafs will find a way to make it happen.
Well, Anthony, let me ask you. I mean, if Russ's scenario plays out and he goes to the Islanders in September at the beginning of training camp and says, okay, we're not going to talk about this for the rest of the year. If I'm Garth Snow, I'm calling up people and saying, okay, what do you give me for John Tavares?
You have to get that lockdown situation here at some point. I don't think you could string it out as long as it did with Steven Stamkos. They do need to get this situation taken care of, preferably sooner rather than later. So in my mind, again, yeah, they have to get this thing. They have to get this done. And again, to what Russ was saying as well, I've had the Rangers in the back of my head ever since they dealt Stepan. I think there's an opening. I think there's an opening there, and I think the Rangers, are a genuine threat here in terms of bringing.
Well, here's the other thing about
Tavares.
The other thing about the Leafs. So in Marner's first year, he gets 61 points. In Tavares' first year, he has 57. Tavares' point high is 86. I think Marner could be around 75 at his point high. Why am I going to spend all this money on Tavares when technically Marner may be 10 points, 12 points less a year than him?
Right. I mean, it's
because you think to yourself, Tavares, did that with the Islanders. You're putting Tavares, out on power plays now with Matthews and
sure. So I'll put him back at 86 points. I'll give him 86.
Tavares is a 100-point player on the Leafs. I mean that's.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know why he wouldn't be. I mean, what he's done on the Islanders with really absolutely so little around him, and now you're taking him. And Matthews is going to be close to a 100-point guy, so. I can't. I have a tough time imagining Tavares is going to be close to 100 points. I really do. I mean, if they're playing together,
90. All right, give him 90 points. If he's going to be a 90-point guy and Marner's going to be somewhere between like 75 and 80, why am I spending all this extra money and upsetting my organization when I got the younger kid in Marner? Why am I doing this?
Right, and the thing is that Marner is not like somebody like. Marner is not like somebody like a Jordan Eberle or something like in terms of being a complementary player. Marner is a generator of offense.
Right.
He proved that last year. He was not the one. It wasn't Tyler Bozak or James Van Riemsdyk that was generating offense on that line. It was Marner who was creating offense, stretching defenses, making plays. He's a playmaker on the wing. I don't think he's got.
I love Mitch Marner. I'm totally. I mean, I think he's a great player, but I don't know that. I would put him in Tavares' category, yet.
He's not Tavares, but
I also think he's small. He's smallish, and I wonder, you do have to wonder how that works out for him as time goes on here. Where Tavares is big, has a lot of size, has shown already his, durability in different situations. I think that Tavares is like.
Hey, look, Tavares has better hands and better vision, and Marner is faster, and Marner is a better generator as far as a playmaker than Tavares at times. That's where you have to sort of make this trade-off. But the only way I'm taking Tavares if I'm the Leafs is if he comes in at around $7 million, because then, yes, I could get rid of Kadri and somebody else and fit him in with everybody else. If I can't fit him in with everybody else, I'm not doing it.
And on top of the Rangers, which I think is a viable option, you have to factor in the teams that were in on Stamkos being in on Tavares. That means Detroit moving into that new building without the centerpiece of their franchise. They'll be willing to spend to open up the pocketbooks.
Yep.
Buffalo. I thought before that if there was a plan B of him, wanting to get close to Toronto but not being able to play in Toronto, that Buffalo would be a fit. But they have Ryan O'Reilly and they have Eichel, and they're going to be paying Eichel big on his contract. So I don't know if that works. The one that might work. And this makes me sick to say this, is Montreal, because we just said, you could drive a Mack truck up the middle on that team because their center position is so bad. So
I touch on that for a second, Mike, because that was my next little thought here. I talked to somebody today, and then I was driving around. I heard XM on XM radio today, and I heard not driving. Sorry, while I was cleaning my car, I had XM on in the car. And I heard Craig Cousins on there, and he was talking about, he's brought up something kind of in passing that I'd heard as well. Montreal, why is Montreal saving all this cap space? Like, Montreal is doing a lot of cap space saving right now. Mm-hmm. The Markov thing is another example of that. Now, unless, the Markov thing is a very calculated plan that everybody's in on that we don't know about, they say, go ahead with play over there for a while, we'll pay you less, you'll come back here and you'll play, which is very possible. Otherwise, Montreal is saving cap space for what exactly? When they consider themselves like contenders, usually don't save up cap space. Are they thinking in terms of Duchene, or are they thinking in terms of Tavares next year?
They could be thinking in terms of somebody. I mean,
I think you have to look at that because Montreal doesn't usually save cap space.
Right. I mean, the Rangers lose 7.9 and Rick Nash just in regard, even with the other savings they have. The Rangers don't have that many guys locked up. They don't.
Which brings me to the Rangers point on my blog today, and that was the other rumor that's flying around is Brady Shea for Matt Duchene, and this is a funny one because very rarely, and it is a straight up rumor. That's the trade is a straight up thing, which is, and it's funny because straight up when I've talked to a lot of Rangers fans, they say that's too much to give up for Matt Duchene. Brady Shea is such a key part of our future, such one of our top defensemen. When I talk to the Colorado people, they're like, oh, that's too much to give up for Duchene. Duchene's is great. It's always interesting to me when both sides don't think that it's a good trade. But that usually tells me that it might actually be a trade that could make some sense. But what do you think, Russ? Could Brady Shea get Duchene? Do you think that's
I think Brady Shea could get Duchene. I mean, if you remember when we talked early on, I said that he meets the criteria, but I don't think the Rangers would do the deal because I don't think in this day and age, Matt Duchene is a nice center, but he's not a superstar center. And Shea's not a superstar either, but a really good top 4 defenseman or a guy who could even be a number 2 compared to a really good center is worth a lot more if he continues on this arc. And so I don't think the Rangers would risk it. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really feel that. It doesn't feel
they
like
have bodies that could fill the defense.
But it's not what Sakic's asking for. Sakic's asking for, according to what we heard before, the crazy and them things. This is way more than way less than Sakic was asking for. The Braden Shea, even is a good player. He would be part of a deal that would also include like a first-round draft pick and another prospect. That would be more of what Matt.
He's not going to get that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he ever was going to get that. But it is starting to remind me so much of Rick Nash in Columbus. Like the whole thing with Matt Duchene, it really reminds me because we talked so many times about this is what the asking price was for Rick Nash in Columbus, and then eventually the Rangers got him for something that really kind of shocked the hell out of everybody. Like that it was really kind of like a surprising deal.
And if you piece things together, the $6.5 million salary that Stepan had, the $7.8 million that will fall off the payroll when Nash's contract expires at the end of this year, that's enough room to sign Tavares. The Rangers will have the room. Right. And I don't think that there is any other team that can offer what Russ was saying, the ability of him to stay where he wants to stay and make the money that he deserves to make and contend for a Stanley Cup, which the Islanders can't give them and the Rangers can.
See, I think if Tavares got signed tomorrow, then even though I wouldn't like this deal, I think the likelihood of this deal would increase. But with Tavares being out there for next year, if the Rangers get Duchene, they're not getting Tavares too. Like they're just not going to do it because he won't come.
It'll be one or the other. Whoever it is that they acquire, it'll be the one guy.
Yeah,
it'll be that. Now if they go and I don't know. I know there's been talk of New York and Toronto. I know.
Yeah, let's get into that
one,
because I love Larry Brooks. I love reading his columns, but it's late July, and I think this was fodder just to fill space because. This Nick Holden for Tyler Bozak rumor that it's out there.
I talked to Russ about this yesterday, Mike. How much Tyler Bozak is loved by Toronto all of a sudden. How many years were you desperate to trade Tyler Bozak for a bag of pucks? Like, how many top podcasts did we talk? I mean, it's like last year he had a great year because he's obviously a great player when he's complementary with the other players, but.
Right.
But my gosh, it was like, it's just so suddenly Nick Holden is like not enough to get.
No, but that's okay. Is Tyler Bozak a perfect number 1 center? No, he's a terrible number 1 center. He's an okay number 2. He's a great number 3, and that's what teams like Pittsburgh and the New York Rangers are looking for. And centers are almost as valuable.
A number 3 center for Nick Holden.
Nick Holden is crap.
He's not crap.
He is crap. He's not good,
Here's the thing. This is your typical Larry Brooks bedtime story for Ranger fans. They got Kevin Shattenkirk, so what else could they do that would feel as good as like warm milk and cookies? And get rid of Nick Holden, who was horrible in the playoffs, especially in his own end, and get Tyler Bozak, somebody who they could use for a position that they need. And this is just assuming that the Leafs would do this, which I don't think they would. There's no reason.
No.
I mean, Nick Holden's 11 goals, if you want to really break them down, they weren't all game breakers. But if you want to talk about what his 11 goals and his defense equals, it's not very good. It's not.
Nick Holden had a career year last season with the Rangers because Alain Vigneault overused him. He was the second leading time on ice defenseman on the team. And in the second half of the year, and Russ can attest to this, he was a liability on the ice. You know, he had 11 goals. He had 23 assists. That was his career high, 34 points. He's a right-hand shot. He would not improve the Leafs' top four. He would be a bottom-pairing guy, and Ron Hainsey would be a better top four option.
And let's talk about the second part of this. So Brooks' foray into this was, well, hey, the Rangers get that second buyout window so they could buy out Mark Stahl. But I'll tell you what, knowing how quickly Dan Girardi got snapped up with Tampa, if the Rangers buy out Mark Stahl, he'll be on Washington the next day. Washington will sign him for the minimum or $1.5 million the next day. And if I'm the Rangers, why am I helping out the Capitals? I already helped out Tampa only because I had to get out from under. They don't have to get out from under with Stahl. So I think it's totally unrealistic, the whole article. I think the one that was just as realistic was when Larry Brooks wrote that, hey, Mario Lemieux was going to sell the Penguins and become a member of the Rangers.
That was fun.
I am not saying Tyler Bozak is the second coming, but what we're talking about here, if the Leafs decided to trade him, it only makes sense for them to trade for a defenseman, but a defenseman that upgrades their blue line. And Nick Holden does not do that. If they trade,
I'm not as down. I mean, I know Nick Holden had a tough time in the playoffs, but I'm not as down on Nick Holden as you guys are.
Well, hey, but think about this. All right, forget about. Let's just say we're back to where we were with Nick Holden last year. The Rangers got him for practically nothing.
Yes.
Right. No, I know. And
now you're going to give up a valued member of the Leafs for a guy who had marginal success one season?
But here's the other thing, okay? We're talking about Tavares and the $13 million they'll have next year to sign him. The Rangers have 5 forwards signed next year.
I know.
They don't really have $13 million to sign Tavares. They don't have JT Miller signed yet. They don't have Jimmy Vesey signed yet.
Yeah, but none of these are big contracts.
Yeah. And they'll have
those two, you're about 6. You have to be at least 6 or 7 million between VC and JT Miller.
Are you counting Rick Nash's 7.9 coming off?
Yeah, so let's say Rick Nash coming off is equal to VC and JT Miller.
It's going to be more than that. It won't even be that.
Right. So you don't have as much money to sign Tavares.
No. I mean, you could get a third player in there. Those two are not going to make 7.9 together.
Together? Oh, I think they will.
I don't know about that.
I don't know.
I mean, think so.
Maybe not.
Yeah, and you know the Rangers are going to have some young players coming along, and their first round pick from this year, Elias Anderson. He might even make the team this year, but if he doesn't, he'll definitely
next year too.
Yeah. Okay.
Just saying.
Enjoy.
And Brady Shea, by the way.
Well, that's going to be
another RFA who, again, they could probably – what they'll probably do with Shea is give him one of those 5-year deals and give it to him at like a middle-of-the-road defenseman salary because he'll only be second year into his career. Yeah. So I don't think this Nick Holden thing makes no sense from the Leafs' perspective. Zero sense.
And Kevin McGran, my colleague from the Toronto Star, spoke and wrote in an article a couple weeks ago that the Leafs are not interested in Nick Holden. So this being, I understand why it's being floated out there, but there is no desire for a guy who is this is not Cliff Fletcher and Jeff Finger being signed. This is who had half a good season. We're talking about a guy who had one good year. And he's not that good of a defenseman. And this team, they don't need a Nick Holden. They need maybe an Oli Mata or a Chris Tanev to upgrade their defense.
Mike, I just got a text from Jeff Finger with a sad emoji. I mean, sad face emoji. That's not nice.
Maybe I was just
maybe I would have given him the finger.
Maybe I just like Holden because Catcher in the Rye is one of my favorite books. But I do really.
William Holden would have more name recognition and a lot more cachet if he wasn't dead.
Jeff Finger, if he played baseball, would have been teammates with Barry Legg.
But here's the thing. Seriously, he's coming off of one decent season. Why in the world did Colorado get rid of him in the first place if he was this good?
No, I agree with that. I partially more than anything just think that Bozak's right.
Vigneault fell in love with him, and he used him a ton.
And their English teacher was Mr. Hand.
Right. We're getting a little too educated today, Mike. We can't go there with this show. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. That's
Adam.
So something important. Let's talk about this day in hockey history because I have something pretty good. 20 years ago today, a major signing happened. It's a little obscure, but it was big at the time, really big at the time. And especially in your world, Russ, you should remember this.
Yeah, Lay's Potato Chips signed Mark Messier to a contract.
Very close. Mark Messier did sign a contract, a 3-year deal with the Vancouver Canucks. 20 years ago today.
Yeah, that was the worst decision of his career.
Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of people don't really remember him.
Wasn't Keenan coaching the Canucks when he signed there? Or did he?
I think he was. I think Keenan was coaching the team at that point. Yeah.
Oh,
that was when Keenan was on his demolition tour of the Western Conference, where he was going from team to team, just tearing them apart. So other teams, other GMs would have to spend the next decade rebuilding them. Like
the only person who benefited from Mark Messier signing in Vancouver was Marcus Naslund, who then went to the Rangers and sucked them dry for a couple of years after getting his numbers inflated from playing with Mark Messier.
A good reference there.
Yeah, very good reference.
Yeah.
I also have my speaking of references, I have my Larry Brooks article on my wall here in my office. I was telling Russ about this yesterday. Larry Brooks was the first person to try to out me during the first lockout. And wrote, I know who the anonymous blogger named Eklund is, and put my initials in there. And so I hang that proudly on my wall right over there. So
it's Alexander Daig.
Yeah, remember that? That was the rumor for a while. That was great. And then what's funny about that? Maybe I should. It's a good story I could tell. I could probably tell the story now. But all right, so here's the great story about that is I contacted Alexander Daig when that happened. And he loved it, and we were this close to going with it. Like he was going to do like a press conference and announce it. And then he was I forget what he was like. He just, at the last minute we saw. I kind of like backed off. I'm like, I probably shouldn't do this because whatever it was. But he was having a good time with it, so that was pretty damn funny. That would have been good.
Funny thing is, I looked it up a couple weeks ago. Hockey Insider hasn't tweeted something in a couple years, but he's still got 38,000 followers or something like that.
Well, then Hockey Insider became Alexander Daig too, right? Remember that also happened.
No, but Hockey Insider was supposed to be a guy in jail. That's the whole thing.
That's Incarcerated Bob. That's what it is.
That's right.
That's different. Yeah, he's totally different.
I forgot about that guy.
Still going strong, Incarcerated Bob. As far as I know, like he'll pop up in my Twitter feed once in a while.
Yeah.
These are good times. I'm really kind of disappointed. I think the Twitter hasn't come up with a good one for a couple of years. Like it's maybe my theory is there's just too many people trying to be the next Hockey Insider, so there's no one's being able to like get like mass appeal.
Yeah.
There are tons of like these hockey rumor break type people out there that you'll see. But anyway, it used to be fun to see like every year who the next one was going to be. But
imitation is the most sincere form of flattery.
It is, and my goal for my kids when I tell them to go to college is they should hope when they graduate to be able to be a fake Twitter account of someone famous. I think that's the most.
There you go.
If you can someday say I'm a fake Twitter account of someone famous, then you're in good shape.
Fake real Donald. Oh, never mind.
Yep.
So I guess there would be like if you wanted a fake one for Mike, it would be like Mike from Syracuse.
No.
Can you imagine if there was a fake Mike in Buffalo?
No, Mike from Cheektowaga.
Yeah.
I'll be Tony from Camden.
I like it.
Oh, man. Okay, here's the last thing. PK Subban was caught up with at a wedding, and was asked about Markov. That's amazing. I think you can't.
Well, Markov got married a couple weeks ago.
I guess this maybe was there.
Yeah.
Wedding attendant. Okay, I spoke to Markov's old defensive partner and wedding attendee, PK Subban. Okay, so this is from Arpan Basso.
Oh, yeah.
NHL.com, yes.
Right, okay, so he says, his reaction, and this is what he said, even before I played for the team, this is Subban on Markov, I watched him play for the team and be their best defenseman. Even while I was there, I still thought he was our best defenseman. Even though a lot of people thought because of what I got paid, it was me. You can't really put a price tag on how he plays because he's so smart, the way he sees the ice. Anybody who played with him knows this. So that was like the quote. It was pretty,
So that's PK basically saying, "Hey, Montreal, you paid me $9 million. You're suckers because Andrei Markov made me bet."
Right.
No, but here's the thing, though. But again, this is like people would never say anything bad about Sergei Gonchar either, but he hung on way too long too. There is going to be a point where Markov diminishes, and nobody wants to sort of be holding the bag when it happens. I don't blame him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought Markov was getting there, but then last year I felt like he got a little bit better. And okay, finally, the little rumor I'm working on here, and I continue to hear this, and it's nothing brand new, but it hasn't gone away, is that the Calgary Flames are very interested in Jaromir Jagr. So just to keep your eye on it. I don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, and it's something I think Calgary feels like they can wait on. And I think Jagr's fine waiting on it as well because but it seems as if of all the teams, that's the one team that really does have sincere interest in Jagr.
I do have something I can report. There's an E5 on Coke Zero, just so you know.
What about Coke Zero?
They're getting rid of it. It's done.
Oh, good.
Man.
Yeah, and you know why, Russ? Because there's the popularity of the new the green labeled Coke, the Coca-Cola Life.
Blend Coke, right?
Yeah, it's stevia or
stevia. I mean, yes, stevia.
Yeah, that has become extremely popular because people, who have diabetic issues like me, they can have it. It's only it's less sugar. Coke Zero is just basically Diet Coke with a little different taste. It's not very good.
My parents have loaded up on that stuff, man. If I go over there, like they just say, you want a drink, and then you get Coke Zero first and then water second. Like that's what you get.
Real quick Coke story for everyone before we get out of here. So this is really funny. So
you're going to be upset.
I was just like I said, I was in Germany and Austria with my daughter recently, and the last time I was in Germany, however, was quite a while ago, and it was the last time I went to Venice. Okay, because Venice is part of the trip, and I was in Venice this time, and I was in Venice years ago, and when I was in Venice was the day. Like a 1 week exactly following the introduction of new Coke. Okay, so remember, and the getting rid of Coca-Cola thing in general. So I drank Coke a ton back then, and I was really upset about it. So I go to Europe, and new Coke hadn't hit Europe, so I was drinking Coke like crazy again, thinking it was the last time I was ever going to have actual Coke. And then of course when I returned like a month after I got back, Coca-Cola Classic was reintroduced or whatever. Which is just standard Coca-Cola, which is what we have today. And New Coke was eliminated, or perhaps turned into Pepsi. I'm not sure. New Coke was basically Pepsi.
Yes, yeah. New Coke was the biggest. New Coke was the biggest PR disaster in the history of.
You have one of the most popular products ever.
I still remember when my wife, before we had kids, we'd go to Europe quite a few times during the year. We had something called Coke Light.
Yes.
Which was basically it said right on it was 5 calories.
Right.
5 calories. It tasted exactly like regular Coca-Cola. So my wife actually contacted the bottling company. She was just curious about it. She contacted Coca-Cola down in Atlanta. Some sort of like ingredient that they allow in Europe that the FDA did not approve in the States. But otherwise, it was exactly the same, and it was only 5 calories.
Wow,
we got like a case of it. I mean, we're not big soda. Best of all.
Probably weren't growing an extra arm or something like that, were you? Like,
I don't know.
Why the FDA was not allowing it in European with its high standards.
Yeah, the secret ingredient was from Chernobyl. But no. Sorry, but no. To your point, Ak, Coke came out about 5 or 6 years ago with Coke with Splenda. It was so sickeningly.
Oh, it was horrible.
Sweet.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, it was like drinking Jolt Cola.
All right, but here's a trivia question.
Yes, now Jolt is like.
Hold the thought on Jolt.
It's the best thing in the world.
Hold it. Who was the spokesperson for New Coke?
Oh man,
Norm Macdonald or George Hamilton?
Nope.
Wasn't Colonel Sanders, was it?
Nope. Somebody worse.
Donald Trump.
Worse.
Oh, whoa.
The devil.
Worse?
Better than the devil.
A pile of rags. Was it just a pile of rags, Russ? What was it?
Bill Cosby.
Ross Perot. Oh!
Well, you got to remember Cosby owned, because Cosby owned, I think, one of the bottling plants.
And the other one was owned by O.J. Simpson.
Coke. I think the one in Atlanta actually is the one that he owned.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so he had direct investment.
That's something. And, it's crazy because this Coke back then, I don't know when Coke went to corn syrup. I'm not sure if that was before New Coke or after New Coke, where it went from sugar to corn syrup. Because now
I think it was after, because the when I was looking at the New Coke, they were saying it was less sweet than the regular Coke, so it had to be after.
Mexican Coke, which is what I get now exclusively, is like the original Coke, which is really good.
Well, the kosher Coke is the same way. You could at Passover, if you want to walk into like ShopRite, if you want to order, basically the kosher for Passover Coca-Cola, you'll get the same stuff. And some people do. I know somebody that orders like cases of it.
You know why New Coca-Cola happened?
No.
It was because of the Pepsi challenge. Remember the Pepsi challenge?
Pepsi challenge.
Pepsi challenge. Oh God, I'm having flashbacks now.
Yes, it was a commercial where they would have two like paper cups on a table, and they would bring people up and they're like, try this, and which one do you like better? And like 80% of people like Pepsi better when drunk from a little thing like this, because Pepsi was sweeter just by nature.
Yeah.
So you would drink and you're like, oh, that's sweeter. I think that's better if you're drinking this much of it. But if you're drinking a whole Coke, you're like, oh, Pepsi's horrible. You can't, like Pepsi and RC Cola were like on that over there,
Oh, don't drag RC into it. RC is good.
RC's too sweet too, man. Too sweet.
Listen, don't drag RC Cola into this.
You remember huge on Dr. down set. My father was huge when he was in the service. Was drafted into the Army for Vietnam. He loved Dr. Pepper down south. When he got it back up here, it just didn't taste anywhere near the same.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Noticeable thing.
They must have added another 85 ingredients at that point.
If you take Coke and Robitussin and mix them together, you get Dr. Pepper. That's exactly how you do it.
Well, hey, we know that back when it was started, Coca-Cola included cocaine in it. It was owned by Ty Cobb, so.
Well, because it was a nerve tonic before it was a soda.
Right.
Well, Take a Boost, which Anthony's never had.
I knew it. I knew we were going to get a Take a Boost.
Anthony, where do you live?
You still owe me a Take a Boost.
Where do I live?
Are you in New Jersey?
I'm sorry?
Where do you live, Anthony?
I grew up in South Philadelphia. I live in Somerton, very end of Northeast Philly.
Okay, yeah. So I have South Jersey, or right around the Florence Bordentown area, where like the Pennsylvania Turnpike hits the New Jersey Turnpike, right there. Yeah. You can, within like a 10 square mile thing, you can get this thing called Drink-A-Toast, which is like Coke syrup, but it's something also that's not allowed by the FDA. But you make your own. Basically, it's like you can combine it with water to just get this incredible tasting flat Coke, or you can combine it with like seltzer water and create like the best Coke you've ever had. There's some ingredient in that as well that's illegal, and it's only allowed to be sold in that county of New Jersey. Because it goes back into like the late 1800s. It's like it goes back before.
You still owe me a jug. We bet on that.
I know. I will get you. I have to bring one. I'm just going to bring one. I will bring one to the game. I will bring one to a Flyers game for both of you to try.
You need to bring it to the Flyers game.
I'm going to bring it to a Flyers game next year for sure. Opening night. Okay. Opening night. I will be there with a jug of it. We'll combine it with water. We'll mix it right there.
And everybody in the press box will be going into diabetic shock.
Oh yeah, it's like Jolt times 10. I think.
Oh, so wait, it's a syrup that you add water to?
Yes, it's a syrup, but you get it in a jug that's like this big. It's like that big of a jug. It's a syrup, so that big of a jug will make like the equivalent of probably like 10 2-liter Cokes. So it's like, and that's how you buy it. You can also just get it like in some stores that they'll sell it, to you as a drink, and they're already pre-mixed it, or you can get it. It's a really good slushy, like a really good slushy, like like a Coca-Cola slushy,
It's a little different.
Okay, Friday is Slurpee talk here on the Hockey Buzzcast.
Now, okay, so first off, I need some Kentucky Fried Chicken. I need to get my Drink-A-Toast, and I got to
say something about Jolt. What are you going to say about Jolt?
Going to rain like crazy all weekend, but I'm going to we're heading down the shore anyway with a bunch of like my son's having like a bunch of 10-year-olds. So pray for me, because we're going to be in a really small place with probably 8 or 9 10-year-old boys. It's going to be raining like crazy. I don't know what I'm going to do with them.
Don't you have a canopy? Just put a canopy on the beach.
Yeah, I could do that.
And with one gust of wind, it'll get swept up, Russ.
Here's my answer: a canopy and a ping pong table. That's it.
My normal thing is this: we have a couple old metal detectors that we keep down the shore just for fun, and I bought them at a garage sale.
Searching for Jimmy Hoffa.
Right, I bought them at a garage sale, and I'll go out in the morning and I'll buy a bunch of like small metal toys at CVS and bury them in the sand, and then we'll go out with them and they'll dig up. Wow, I found a toy, and because I'll know roughly where they are. but usually I'll buy like 15 things and we'll find 7 of them. So over the years, you know, it's, it's at this point now where there's at least 40 things out there around where I live, buried in the sand that, you know, every once in a while we'll find. I'm like, man, I think I buried that 2 years ago.
So now a 75-year-old guy, when he's doing this for a living, he's going to find something made in China instead of finding like gold.
There is nothing, I'm telling you, there's nothing more exciting to a kid. Like, they don't know I do this, obviously. They don't watch the show, thank God. But I'm just saying, but there's nothing cooler to a kid with a metal detector than actually finding something, digging it up and be like, oh my gosh, I found this, you know, or that. Sometimes I'll just put a spoon out there. just find things. Yeah. Anyway, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. And we will talk to you on Monday. Thanks again.